Hi, it's Mark Donegan. Most writers stare at a blank page waiting for inspiration. But what if the secret is just asking better questions? The what if framework turns any ordinary observation into a compelling story using 6 simple categories even a 13-year-old can follow. I've spent years building storytelling systems that drive real business results. Now here's the conversation.
Listen up, it's marketing time. Bright ideas sparking, blowing your mind. From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Welcome to the Marketing Execution Podcast. This is the show for tech founders and leaders building B2B products and technologies. We show you how to go further, faster to get the business results you need.
From strategies to big exec dreams, catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Mark, I've been thinking about something that honestly caught me off guard this week. You know how we're always talking about frameworks and systems for marketing? Well, I stumbled across this piece about using what-if questions to turn boring observations into actual stories. And at first I thought, okay, this sounds like something for creative writing classes. But then it hit me. This is basically how the best founders I know pitch their companies.
You're onto something here, Tim. You really are. Because here's what most founders get wrong. They think storytelling is this fluffy, nice-to-have skill, like it's separate from the real work of building a product or closing deals. But the best pitches I've ever heard, they all start with a what-if question. Every single one.
Okay, so break that down for me. What makes a what-if question actually useful versus just, random brainstorming?
Right. So there's actually a framework here that I think is genius in its simplicity. And look, I know we talk about frameworks a lot on the Marketing Execution Podcast, but this one is different because it gives you specific categories for asking these questions. It's not just sitting there staring at a wall hoping inspiration strikes.
Which is what most of us do, let's be honest.
Exactly. So here's the first category, and it's my favorite. It's called Flip the Truth. You take something that's obviously true about what you're observing and you just invert it. So if you're looking at how customers currently buy software, and the truth is they go through a long sales cycle, you ask yourself, what if the sales cycle were instant? What if there were no sales cycle at all?
That's literally how some of the biggest product-led growth companies started, isn't it?
Yes, that's exactly right. I once heard of a company that built their entire go-to-market strategy around that single question. They looked at enterprise software and asked, what if we just let people use it without talking to sales first? And that one question, that one flip of the truth, it changed everything about how they positioned themselves.
Okay, so that's one category. What else is in this framework?
So the second one is change a purpose. And this is where it gets really interesting for founders thinking about positioning. You take your product or your observation and you ask, what if this were used for something completely different? What if the purpose was the opposite of what everyone assumes?
Can you give me a concrete example? Because I'm trying to picture how this applies to like a B2B SaaS company.
Sure. So imagine you've built an analytics tool. Everyone uses analytics to look backwards at what happened, right? That's the assumed purpose. But what if you asked, what if this analytics tool was actually used to predict what's going to happen? What if the purpose wasn't reporting, but forecasting? Suddenly, you're not competing with every other dashboard tool out there. You've created a new category.
That's actually really smart. You're using the question to find differentiation.
Exactly. And here's the thing, Tim. Most founders skip this step entirely. They just build what they build and then try to figure out how to market it afterwards. But if you're asking these what-if questions early, during product development, during positioning work, you end up with something that's inherently more interesting to talk about.
Okay, so we've got flip the truth, change a purpose. What's next?
Add a new ability. This one is pure imagination fuel. You ask, what if your product or your customer or your market could do something it currently can't? What if your customers could communicate with each other through your platform? What if your product could integrate with something that seems totally unrelated?
This is basically how partnerships get born, right?
100%. Some of the best partnership announcements I've seen started with someone asking a what if question about capabilities. There was this one founder who asked, what if our scheduling tool could also handle payments? And that led to an integration that basically doubled their revenue in 6 months.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this applies beyond just storytelling. This is actually a strategic thinking tool.
That's the hidden secret here, Tim. The framework presents itself as a storytelling technique, but it's really a strategic imagination tool. When you systematically ask what-if questions across these categories, flip the truth, change a purpose, add a new ability, alter the size, shift the time, mix with fiction, you're basically forcing yourself to see opportunities that everyone else misses.
Wait, hold on. Alter the size? How does that work for a startup?
Oh, this is a good one. So you ask, what if your market was 10 times bigger than you think? Or what if your product was designed for a market 1/10 the size? What if you only served companies with over 1,000 employees? Or what if you only served solo founders? The size question forces you to reconsider your entire addressable market.
And shift the time?
This is about timing and context. What if your product existed 5 years ago? What would have been different? Or what if it existed 5 years from now? What features would it need? I saw a recent report that said most founders underestimate how much the market context matters to their success. Timing is everything, and asking what-if questions about time helps you understand whether you're early, late, or right on schedule.
Mark, that's fascinating. Let's pivot for a second and talk about what this means for a founder who's actually sitting down to write their pitch deck this week.
You know what, Tim? That's where this whole thing gets really practical, because a pitch deck is basically a story, right? It's not a list of features. It's not a spreadsheet of metrics. It's an answer to a what-if question that your investors haven't even thought to ask yet.
Okay, so walk me through that. A founder sits down, opens up their slide deck template, and then what?
So here's the thing most people miss. They start with the problem slide, and that's fine. That's the standard structure. But the best pitch decks I've seen, they don't just state a problem. They flip a truth about that problem. They make you see it differently.
Give me a real example here.
All right, so I know of a company that was pitching a hiring platform, and every hiring platform says the same thing. Hiring is slow, hiring is expensive, hiring is broken. Boring, right? But this founder asked herself a what-if question. She said, what if the problem isn't that hiring is slow? What if the problem is that we're hiring for the wrong things entirely?
Oh, that's good. That reframes everything.
Exactly. And suddenly her pitch wasn't about speed or cost. It was about a fundamental shift in how companies think about talent. That's the power of flipping the truth. You're not just identifying a problem. You're making investors question their assumptions about what the problem even is.
So the what if question becomes the hook of your entire narrative.
That's it. That's the aha moment here. Your pitch deck should be answering a what if question that creates tension. Because stories need tension, Tim. They need stakes. And when you ask, what if we're all wrong about this thing we take for granted, you've got instant tension.
And I think this connects to something we talk about a lot on this show, the whole idea of category creation versus category competition.
Yes, oh man, you're reading my mind here. Because category creators are essentially people who asked a really good what-if question and then build a company around the answer. They didn't look at an existing market and say, how do we win here? They said, what if this market was structured completely differently?
And that's a much harder thing to copy, isn't it?
It's almost impossible to copy because you're not competing on features anymore. You're competing on vision. You're competing on imagination. And here's what I think founders underestimate. Investors hear hundreds of pitches. They've seen every feature comparison. But a genuinely surprising what-if question, that sticks with them.
I want to push back a little here, though, because some founders might hear this and think, okay, I just need to be contrarian. I just need to say the opposite of whatever everyone else is saying.
Yeah, that's a trap. Being contrarian for its own sake is just annoying. The what-if question has to be grounded in something real. It has to come from genuine observation. Remember the first step of this whole framework? You start by observing what's actually true. You take notes on reality, and then you ask, what if?
Though it's not about being clever, it's about seeing something that others miss.
That's it. The best what-if questions feel obvious in hindsight. People hear them and they go, oh, why didn't I think of that? That's the sweet spot. not some wild science fiction scenario, just a simple inversion or reframing that makes everyone slap their forehead.
The forehead slap test.
Think about it this way. Every successful startup pitch I can remember had a moment where I went, wait, what? And that moment came from a what if question, whether they called it that or not.
So this framework isn't just for storytelling or pitch decks. It's really about how you think about your entire business.
Look, I think the founders who struggle the most are the ones who can't articulate why their company matters. They know what they're building, they know how it works, but they can't explain the bigger picture. And what if questions force you to zoom out? They force you to think about meaning and possibility.
Which is exactly what investors are trying to understand.
And customers, your customers are asking themselves, what if too? What if I tried this product? What if it actually worked? What if my life was different? You're not selling features, you're selling a vision of a different future. And that vision starts with a question.
All right, Mark, this is making a lot of sense on the strategic level, but I know our listeners are going to want something they can actually do with this. Let's get into the tactical side. How does someone actually apply this framework when they're sitting down to work on their messaging or their positioning?
Okay, so there are 6 categories of what if questions. And I want founders to literally write these down. Grab a notebook, open a doc, whatever works for you.
6 categories. Got it.
First one is flip the truth. You take something everyone assumes is true about your market and you invert it. Remember that hiring platform founder I mentioned? She flipped the truth that hiring is slow. She said, no, the problem is we're hiring for the wrong criteria. So the action is literally write down an assumption and then write the opposite. The second category is changing the purpose. You take what your product does and you ask, what if it were used for something completely different? Slack did this brilliantly. They started as an internal tool for a gaming company, right? Then they asked, what if this was the purpose of every team's communication?
Oh, that's a good one. Notion did something similar too.
Totally. Notion asked, what if a note-taking app was actually a workspace for everything? Different purpose, same underlying tech.
What's number 3?
Add a new ability. This is where you imagine your product or your market has a capability it doesn't currently have. Figma asked, what if design software could be collaborative in real time? That ability didn't exist before. They imagined it and built it.
And that became their whole positioning.
Their entire category. Number 4 is alter the size. Make something way bigger or way smaller than it currently is. Calendly asked, what if scheduling a meeting was a tiny, frictionless thing instead of this big back and forth email chain?
I love Calendly. Such a simple idea.
Simple because they shrank the problem. The 5th category is shifting the time. You place your observation in a different context. Stripe asked, what if accepting payments online was as easy as it will be in 10 years, but we build that now?
So they pulled the future forward.
That's a great way to put it. And the 6th category is to mix with fiction. You combine your observation with something from a completely different world. Superhuman asked, what if email felt like a video game? Speed, keyboard shortcuts, dopamine hits?
Okay, so let me make sure I've got this. Flip the truth, change the purpose, add a new ability, alter the size, shift the time, mix with fiction.
That's the list. And here's the tactical part. I want founders to spend 15 minutes, literally set a timer, and write one what-if question for each category. 6 questions total. And here's the key. Most of those questions will be garbage. That's fine. You're looking for one that makes you go, oh wait, that's interesting. That's the one you build your story around.
So what's a volume game at first?
Always. Lou probably asked dozens of what-if questions before landing on whether video messages replace meetings. But that one question became their entire company narrative.
And once you have that question, what do you do with it?
You test it. You say it out loud to someone. Watch their face. If they lean in, you've got something. If they look confused, keep iterating.
The lean in test, better than any focus group. All right, Mark, we've covered a ton of ground here. Can you bring it all together for us and summarize the key points from everything we've discussed today?
All right, let me bring this all together. We started by talking about how the best founders use what-if questions to turn ordinary observations into compelling stories. This isn't just creative writing fluff. It's a strategic thinking tool that helps you find differentiation and build narratives that actually stick with investors and customers.
Right, and we covered the 6 categories.
Exactly. Flip the truth, change the purpose, add a new ability, alter the size, shift the time, and mix with fiction. Each one gives you a different lens for reimagining your market and your product. The tactical move is simple. Spend 15 minutes writing one question for each category. Most will be garbage, but you're hunting for that one question that makes people lean in. That question becomes the foundation of your pitch, your positioning, and honestly, your entire company story.
Okay, Mark, after everything we've talked about today, what's the one thing you really hope people don't forget when they close this episode?
Your company already has a great what-if question buried inside it. You're just not asking it yet. Stop describing what you build and start asking what world you're trying to create. That question is your unfair advantage. Go find it. The Marketing Execution Podcast is produced by Growth Stage Marketing. We are on a mission to see your company reach wild success using marketing pods.
Too big, accept dreams. Catch the buzz and join the execution. Marketing Convo.
Thank you for listening and being a part of the marketing execution movement and community. To learn how growth stage marketing clients reach more buyers and drive business impact, go to growthstage.marketing. That's growthstage.marketing.